Hey everybody, apologies to my regular viewers, you might find this video a bit redundant because I've already done a video on motorcycle licenses in the UK. However, unlike all my other sort of how to ride videos, help to ride and explaining all the questions that learners need that I have in that playlist called Tips for New Riders or something like that on my channel, I know when I've done a good video because I just get comments saying this is great, thanks, it really helped me, pass the test, all those sorts of things. When I keep getting questions on something, then I know I haven't been clear enough about it. Or people aren't willing to listen to that amount of information, but I will say here, if you want to get a motorcycle, if you aren't willing to sit through 20 minutes of someone talking about licenses, you are going to have problems getting to the point of actually being able to ride, because it can be a complicated road, but it doesn't really need to be if you understand it. So what I'm going to be talking about here is UK motorcycle licenses only. That is two-wheeled machines in the UK only. I'm not talking about other countries, I'm not talking about Europe, and I'm not talking about tricycles. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to write the age up in the corner here, and I'm going to explain, for your age currently, your path along for motorcycles. It would be advantageous to watch through the whole thing so you fully understand it. But if you want to just skip to your age, you can do that. I'm going to try and repeat the information so you have everything, so it's the complete road. But there's some things I better explain before I do that. So provisional license. The provisional license is a green license that you apply for. You don't do any tests, anything for it in the UK, but just basically gives you the ability to start doing tests and things like that. It also happens to be the first sort of form of ID that a lot of people use because you can get it at 16. Okay, I'm also going to answer the question about people who have car licenses and wondering what can I ride. This is quite simple. If you passed your driving license before February 2001, you have an AM license, which means that you're allowed to ride a 50cc scooter restricted to 28 miles an hour without L plates indefinitely. That's just a right that you have. If you passed your test after that date, you're going to need to have taken a CBT within 2 years of the driving test. So either the driving test and then CBT, or CBT then driving test. Either way is fine, but they have to be within 2 years of each other. Then you too get the AM license, which is 50cc's up to 28 miles an hour without L plates, etc. In both examples, these CBTs don't run out. It's just a permanent thing. You can always ride them. It lasts as long as your driving license exists. However, if you wish to ride a 125, no matter what your driving license status is to regard to cars, you're going to need to do a CBT, and that CBT is only going to last for 2 years at a time on the 125s. The reason I'm making this video also, I should mention, is there is an awful lot of people currently looking to get bikes because of COVID. The driving license waiting time for tests is getting ridiculous, but it would seem like the schools are getting people through CBTs faster, maybe because they can do them in groups. I hope the standard isn't falling because of that, and then, you know, like people who are struggling on a geared bike are getting pushed onto a scooter to get them through it, knowing they're going to then get a geared bike, because then they have to learn on the road, and that's a bit dangerous for everyone involved. Okay, well, let's start at the beginning, at 16 years old. So in the UK, at 16 years old, you get your provisional license. So we're just going to call that provisional license, PL. And then you need to take your CBT, your compulsory basic training. This is a one-day course. It's a few hours in a car park, a couple of hours on the road. As I say, in my video, Tips for New Riders, there's videos talking about schools that don't do what they should do, and as I say, they'll try and push you onto a scooter if you're struggling with gears, even if they know you're going to a geared bike afterwards. If they're trying to shorten the day down, it should take about 8 hours. If it's less than that, they're not giving you the training you deserve or that you paid for. Cost of the CBT, I believe now, are more like £120 to £150 for the day, depending. And that includes bike hire, and they might even have helmets and things, but they're a bit grim. So I would say get your gear first and do your CBT, then get your bike. Don't think you need to do it on your bike. It's better to use theirs, because if you drop it, it's their bike. So at 16, provisional license, CBT, and at that age, you're allowed to have a 50cc. That can be geared or non-geared, scooter, motorbike, whatever, 50cc, and it must be restricted to 28 miles per hour. If your bike can go faster than that, technically, it's not legal, because you're supposed to be riding a restricted bike. If your bike is stock and it just happens to go over that, I don't think it's such an issue, but technically the laws say you shouldn't go faster than that. If you are riding a 50cc that you've de-restricted so it goes faster than that, you are putting yourself in a very tricky situation legally. And if you want to know how bad that can get, watch my video, 15% of riders are riding illegally. Or 15% of motorcycle riders are illegal. Something along those lines. I think it's again in that playlist. It's a lot more than a slap on the wrist, and yes, they can find out. So you've got that, and remember that lasts for 2 years. That is also the same as the AM license if you do it via a car, but this one doesn't run out. But obviously at CBT, this does. My advice to most people at 16 is don't do it. Wait till you're 17. Get 125, it's far better. If you can't do that, then obviously you can't do that, but look into other forms of transport. Even electric push bikes, you know, the legal ones that you pedal assisted, they can do 15-20 miles an hour. It's not difficult to do a decent amount of miles on it. If you can only do 28 miles an hour anyway, if you're doing like 20, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference, but it will end up probably being cheaper in the long run. And then when you turn 17 and you get your 125cc, you still have an electric bike that you can use to get you around when you don't want to ride the petrol. Like really local trips and stuff. If you live 10 minutes from a shop, you don't want to get your bike out and warm it up and all that just to go there. Electric bike does that job even better. So yeah, there you go. That's what it is at 16. Now, if you passed your CBT, say on your 16th birthday, that will run out on your 18th birthday. However, at 17 you're automatically upgraded to allow to use the larger cc bikes, the 125cc's. So if you pass at 16 you are automatically upgraded to this, whether you passed on a scooter, whatever, it's an auto upgrade. So at 17 you need to get your provisional license, and then you do your CBT as you would before. Nothing really is different in that test. But at 17, you are allowed to have up to a 125cc. The restriction is on the cc in this example, but there is the cc restriction and the power restriction of 11 kilowatts, which is about 14.5 brake horsepower. Now, most 125s, unless it's a de-restricted two-stroke or something, will fall within that because they are made for this category. So again, this only lasts for 2 years, but if you took it on your 17th birthday, obviously it will run out on your 19th, and that's a good thing because we're going to get on to the next license, and that's the age you need to be to start working on to get bigger bikes. Don't question continuity, I didn't forget about this. Okay, also at 17, you do have an option for getting a full license of sorts, which is the A1 license. This is not a normal path of getting a large motorcycle license. This is if you want to stay on a 125cc forever without needing to take the CBT repeatedly. This is going to give you no shortcut advantages to any larger licenses. It literally is just a 125cc license. And the way you do this is that you have your provisional license, you have your CBT, and then you have to do a Mod 1, which is done in a training off-road area where they do emergency stops, manual handling, all that sort of stuff, swerve avoidance. Then you do your Mod 2 on the road with an instructor, about 40-45 minutes. They're going to ask you to do a few maneuvers and things. They will ask you to follow some road signs. Don't worry if you get lost, as long as you were safe the whole time. You don't actually have to end up at the right place. Oh, and also, sorry, you're going to need a theory for that as well, which needs to be taken when you take this Mod 1 and Mod 2, the theory has to be taken within the last 2 years, because this only lasts 2 years, and the same is true for your CBT. You're going to need to do these if you want the A1, but you progress through this, and then you end up with your full A1 license, which is a pink license. You're allowed to carry pillions, you don't have to have L plates, and I think you can go on motorways, not a problem. Keep in mind, you can't take 50s on motorways ever, 125s are the minimum. The reason I kind of forgot about the A1 license and skirted around it is because so few people go for it, because the CBT, the cost of this is very similar to the A2. It's a bit cheaper, but it's very similar. Most people will stick to doing CBTs, and then when it runs out, doing another CBT, and then going and doing the A2 rather than the A1. I would advise doing that. Just do another CBT and skip the A1, go straight for your A2 when you are 19, but we're going to get onto that. There are some people out there that this suits perfectly. They don't need anything bigger than A1, and that's all they get, and that's absolutely fine. I don't have a problem with it. I just want to make it clear that if you're going to a full bike in the end, you don't go CBT A1 A2 A. You go CBT A1 done. You could upgrade in the future, but it's very little point doing all this first. Or you do CBT A2 full A, if you wish to upgrade to the full A. And one very last thing to mention about the CBT that's becoming more relevant these days is that at 17 on a CBT, you can ride some electric learner legal bikes, such as the Zero FXS 11 kilowatt, not the full power one, the 11 kilowatt one. That bike is as fast as an A2 bike pretty much, but it's because of the way that the engine is measured, and again I have videos on this and I explain it, and I've got a review series and everything on this, on the Zero. It allows you to have a bike that accelerates as fast as an A2 bike on a CBT. Keep in mind, this bike is £10,000. But I should mention there that performance, the most performance you can get out of a CBT right now, in my opinion, is an electric 125 11 kilowatt. So we've done 16 and 17. 18 is exactly the same as 17, what you're allowed to ride. So 19 is the age that you can then get something bigger, and that will put you onto an A2 license, which we'll get onto in a minute. But it's worth noting here, this is why I say about don't do the CBT at 16. If you do the CBT at 16, it's going to run out on your 18th birthday. If you do it at 17, it runs out your 19th. So if you do your CBT at, say, 3 months after your birthday, that means when you turn 19, you have 3 months to complete your A2 that will allow you to ride, I'll get onto the restrictions of the bikes, but allow you to ride them with a proper license, your first pink license that doesn't go away, it lasts forever. So this is how you get to that A2 license. You need to be 19 years of age. You're going to need your provisional license if you don't already have one. And if you have a CBT, great. If it's still valid, it needs to be valid. No, there's the 2 years that it only lasts for. It's got to be valid within the time you're taking your test. But you're going to need to do a CBT or have one. But remember, for the A2, you can actually go to a riding school and say, I want to do the A2 and do a thing called direct access. Well, it's not direct access, but it's direct access to A2, which means that they charge you for a course that puts you through everything, and basically after a few days you end up with your A2 license. So, provisional license, CBT. At this level, you need to pass your theory. That is a multiple choice computer-based test with hazard perception tests as well. Practice this on apps and stuff and get to the point you are not failing much before you try and do it. It just makes it easier and helps you pass quicker. So, presuming that you are 19, you've got your provisional license, you've got your CBT, either you're doing it through your direct access course or you've already got one. You might want to do the theory before the CBT, but it doesn't matter. The theory, by the way, only lasts 2 years like the CBT. So, you need these to have both been done within 2 years of you passing your A2 or taking the A2 test. So, provisional, CBT, theory. Then you have to take Mod 1. Mod 1 is done off the road. It's in a test centre, and that's where you do your manual handling, it's where you do your emergency stop, swerve avoidance, all these sorts of things. I have a video on Mod 1. I have a video on everything here. Apart from provisional license, I don't have a video on that. But I do have a video on everything else. As long as you pass that, you can then move on to Mod 2, which is a separate test with a different price. And that one is an on-the-road test. It normally takes about 40-45 minutes. You'll basically just have the instructor behind you with a radio. You'll ride around, he'll say, go left, go right, take the next left, take the next right. He'll ask you to do a few manoeuvres, possibly. It varies between testers, how they do this. And there'll also be a section where you basically ride for yourself, and they say, follow the signs to such a place. As I mentioned in my Mod 2 video, which you should watch if you want to know about this, don't worry about getting lost. As long as you do everything safely, even if you get lost, it's fine. They're worried about your safety, not your sense of direction. Just generally act like the police are behind you, ride to the speed limits, make sure you're at the speed limits, pay attention to the signs and stuff, and you should be fine. Anyway, if you complete all that at the age of 19, you will get your A2 license, allowing you up to 48 brake horsepower. There is a power to weight ratio that goes with that, as in the bike can't have 48 brake horsepower and weigh nothing because it will be too quick. It needs to be in the right power to weight ratio. But generally A2 bikes, so if you look for ones that are A2 eligible or restrictable, they will be fine for your A2 license. This is a restricted license that doesn't allow you to ride anything over that, but there is no CC restriction. Now, they make bikes which happen to be under that power, by default, like the CBR 500R and a few other bikes, and you can also get ones that are over that, under 95 brake horsepower originally. You can't have any more than that originally, from my memory, and at that point it can be restricted down to the 48 brake horsepower. You need to get a bit of paperwork to prove it's been done, and then you're allowed to ride that bike on your restricted license. When you pass your full test, you are allowed to just de-restrict that bike and have the full power there. So if you're planning to go to a full license eventually after this, it can be better to do the restricted thing, because then you get a bike that's more powerful when you pass your test rather than just the same. So the A2 license lasts forever. It's one of the pink ones, you know, like a full license, but it is restricted. But also note that when you pass, you don't have 12 points allowed, you know, demerit points as it were on your license. You get 6, which means that if you get caught for driving without due care and attention, or you get caught for pulling a wheelie, or a few other minor things, and the police decide to just throw it at you, you can lose your license in one traffic stop. After 2 years, as long as you're clean, that gets increased to the 12, which basically gives you a chance, unless you're being really, really stupid, in which case they will just knock those out in one go. Now, going back to what I was talking about when you're 17 and wanting to take the shortest trip, as it were, to getting the full license, the A2 gives you a shortcut, because the A license, you need to be 24 to have one of those, or you can get it at 21 if you've had an A2 for 2 years. So you can get a full-size bike faster if you get the A2 first. Otherwise, you have to wait till you're 24. You do not want to take an A2 when you're beyond 24, so actually let's call that 19 to 24, because at 24 you basically take the exact same tests on a slightly different bike, and you get a full license rather than a restricted one. So 19 to 24, well, 19 to 23, sorry, 23 is when you'd be doing the A2. Okay, so now the full A license. Sometimes you might hear it referred to as direct access, because if you're at this age group, you'll be able to do this. But yeah, it basically allows you to ride anything. So you do this at 21 if you have an A2 already. This doesn't run out at any point. You can do this. It's just the first opportunity is at 21. However, if you're 24, you can do this straight off. You've got the A2, your path to the full license is going to be retake Mod 1 and Mod 2, just like you did to get your A2, but it's on a slightly different bike, and if you pass both of those, you then get your full A license at the age of 21, opposed to having to wait until you're 24. Yes, you do have to pay the costs. However, a lot of people like to suggest that it costs as much to get the A2 as it does to upgrade to the A. No, it doesn't. I've spoken to schools about this. As if you're a competent A2 rider, you will be able to do a bare minimum amount of training, a refresher day really, and then just go through your tests, and it shouldn't cost you half of what it cost you to get the A2. Shouldn't. Okay, but let's imagine now that you're 24 and you don't even have a CBT, and you want to get on 2 wheels. So this is 24 until forever. You'll need, if you don't have one, a provisional license. Then again, after you've got your provisional license, you're going to need to do your CBT. And again, as I mentioned, this can be done in a direct access course, which can be done over about 3 to 5 to 7 days, depending on how good you are already. If you've had CBT experience, you're going to do better. If you're coming from no bike experience at all, except it's going to take you a bit longer to learn the skill. You're looking to go from 0 to 100 in like 3.5 seconds. And again, you will need a theory test. You can take these in either order. You don't need a theory to do the CBT, but you do need both of them to do the next bit. Remember again, these only last for 2 years, so you need to make sure that you get it done in those 2 years. You'll then do Mod 1. As I mentioned for the A2, Mod 1 is done in an off-road course where you do emergency stop, manual handling, swerve avoidance, all those sorts of things. I have a video on it. And if you pass that, you then move on to Mod 2, which is a 40-45 minute ride on the road with an instructor. There's a few menus involved. There's a section where they ask you to follow signs. Don't worry about getting lost. That's not what they're testing you on. They're testing on you're safe. So if you get lost, but you were safe the whole time, you can still pass. It's not a problem. Yeah, so if you're 24 and you do all that, then you get your full A license, like I do, which allows me to basically ride any motorcycle of any size, no restrictions. If you found this video interesting or useful or easier to understand than the other one, please like the video, I would really appreciate it. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, 64% of people are not. So if you're a new rider, you're getting into this, I have a playlist for you. It's taken me years to put this thing together, but it has helped hundreds of people through their tests, and it could save you a bit of money in training, to just be aware of what you need to know before you get there, rather than them teaching all of it at, you know, cost of day rate. And if you'd really like to help support this channel, please consider joining my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Many benefits to that, check it out. And there's also my merch store, there's links in the description, you can see all the stuff down there. Thank you for watching. Apologies for doing, as I say, a redundant video for my current watches, because we've already kind of been over this, but I'm hoping that this approach might work better than the last. Catch you next time.